Before we look at the next tragedy that struck the murmuring Israelites, let's review the death of Aaron, up there on Mount Hor. Now the children of Israel, the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. There you see it in the background. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor, by the border of the land of Edom, saying, and this is the border, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the waters of Meribah. Another word for Meribah, Kadesh, Almeida. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up to Mount Hor. This is serious words. And strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son. And Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. So Moses did just as the Lord commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. View from Aaron's tomb. So Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. What happened in the valley below Mount Hor in the camp of Israel? And now when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. Have you ever traveled to a marvelous dream with great expectations, only to make a U-turn and go back to the dreary place with your shattered dreams? Can you imagine Israel's emotions of failure and disappointment here at Kadesh Barnea? They had to turn back from the dream of green and streams of water to the barrenness of the desert. The hosts of Israel again turned toward the south and made their way over sterile wastes that seemed even more dreary after a glimpse of the green spots among the hills and valleys of Edom. Eventually they stopped at the foot of a mountain. From the mountain range overlooking this gloomy desert rises Mount Hor, the place of Aaron's death and burial. There you see it. Together these two aged men and Eleazar toiled up the mountain height. The heads of these two men were white, with 120 winters behind them. Can you see the sad, painful funeral procession ascending to death? Their lives had been marked with deepest trials and honors that had ever came to man. Can you imagine this? They saw God's glory. They were men of great natural ability, brilliant, and all their powers had been developed, exalted, and dignified by communion with the Infinite One, giants of the desert. Their life had been spent in unselfish labor for God and their fellow men. Their countenances gave evidence of great intellectual power. When you looked at them, you could see brains, firmness and ability of purpose, and strong affections. Many years Moses and Aaron had stood side by side in their cares and labors. But the time had come for the two brothers to say goodbye. How do you handle the painful goodbyes of life? Some people never get over it. They had faced unnumbered dangers and had shared the special blessings of God. They move very slowly. Every moment in each other's company was precious. Please enjoy the treasure of the company of your loved ones. The ascent was steep and toilsome, and they often paused to rest. They talked of the past. They talked of the future, which was bleak. Before them, as far as the eye could see, was spread out the scene of their desert wanderings. They looked down to the plain below, where the vast hosts of Israel encamped, for whom these chosen men had spent the best portion of their lives. And they cried, looking down to the people. Somewhere beyond the mountains of Edom was the path leading to the promised land. That land whose blessings Moses and Arad were not to enjoy. They were not bitter, neither did they complain. And here I learn a great lesson. Do not complain. Do not become bitter. Become better. Yet a solemn sadness rested upon the countenances as they think back of what happened. So they came very near to the promised land with its lush and food, and yet so far from the greatest dream. So near, yet so far. Aaron's work for Israel was done. God had called him to unite with Moses in his great and important mission. 40 years before, at the age of 83, this happened. What did the two brothers do when they ascend this height at Rephidim 40 years earlier? Now, as long as Aaron and Hur supported the arms of Moses, the Amalekites were prevented from conquering Israel. And I think Moses said to Aaron, my brother, thank you for upholding one of my arms at Rephidim. They talked about the past. Moses had been permitted to ascend Mount Sinai, to approach the presence of God and beheld the divine glory. The Lord had conferred upon the family of Aaron the office of the priesthood, and he had honored him with sacred consecration ceremony when he consecrated him as high priest. He had great honors. Now they are on their way to Aaron's funeral. When his two sons, Abiram and Dathan, were slain for disregarding God's express command, he did not rebel. He did not cry. He did not murmur. He was a great man in many respects. What was the sin that marred Aaron's noble life on this great plain before Sinai at which you are looking? Aaron committed a grievous sin when he yielded the clamors of the people and made the golden calf at Sinai, and again when he united with Miriam in envy and murmuring against Moses. With much tears, he said to Moses, I'm so sorry. Can you visualize the two as they walk the last piece of territory together? And he with Moses offended the Lord at Kadesh by disobeying the command to speak to the rock that it might give forth water. It was the exalted character of his sacred office as representative of our great high priest Jesus that made Aaron's sin at Kadesh so serious, and they speak about this as they ascend. With deep sorrow, Moses removed from Aaron the holy vestments. Can you see this? Taking off the ephod, that sacred clothes. Do you think the two brothers broke out in tears? I think so. You know, stripping his brother from the symbols of salvation. I think they shook in tears. And then he placed them upon Eleazar, who thus became his successor by divine appointment. Can you see Eleazar? Moses puts his father's clothes on him. What kind of emotions do we have here among the three of them? Use your imagination. It's a solemn, sad moment. For his sin at Kadesh, Aaron was denied the privilege of officiating as God's high priest in Canaan, offering the first sacrifice in the goodly land, and thus consecrating the inheritance of Israel. It was forfeited. He was to come within sight of the promised land, but was not to enter it. So near and yet so far, almost persuaded, there's a song. Moses was to continue to bear his burden in leading the people to the very borders of Canaan. And here you're looking at the scenery from Mount Nebo to the bottom. He was to come, this is Moses, within the sight of the promised land, but was not to enter it. Had they borne unmurmuringly the test at Kadesh, how different would have been their future, and how different do our deeds affect our future. A wrong act can never be undone. This is serious. It may be that the work of a lifetime will not recover what has been lost in a single moment of temptation or even thoughtlessness. Watch and pray, my friend. The absence from the camp of the two great leaders, and the fact that they had been accompanied by Eleazar, who it was well known was to be Aaron's successor in holy office, awakened a feeling of apprehension, and the return was anxiously awaited. Watching the mountain, watching the mountain. As the people looked about them, upon their vast congregation, they saw that nearly all the adults who left Egypt had perished in the wilderness. You know, I once did a poem. We call it sift say in grammar. Sense, intention, feeling, and mode. At the funeral service, for instance, the poet brings the thought out that when you attend that funeral service, unconsciously you think of your own. And this is what happened to Moses and Eleazar. All felt a foreboding of evil as they remembered the sentence pronounced against Moses and Aaron. They were worried. They were worried. Their solicitude for their leaders was heightened by the bitter memories of self-accusings. So that interesting emotions down there, waiting for their leaders. The forms of Moses and Eleazar were at last discerned. Hey, they're coming down, look there. Slowly descending the mountainside. But Aaron was not with them. Emotions, emotions, emotions. Upon Eleazar were the high priestly garments, showing that he had succeeded his father in the sacred office. As the people with heavy hearts gathered about their leader, Moses told them that Aaron had died, my friends. He died in my arms on Mount Hor. And I buried him. Can you see the tears in the eyes of Moses and Eleazar standing next to him? Have you cried at funerals? Death is the most cruel enemy. The congregation broke forth in mourning and lamentation, for they all loved Aaron. Though they had so often caused him sorrow, they mourned for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. How does Aaron's funeral compare to modern funerals? And here you're looking at one. What did Aaron's funeral cost in comparison with modern funerals? God is not honored in the great display so often made over the dead. and the extravagant expense incurred in returning their bodies to the dust. The whole congregation sorrowed for Aaron, yet they could not feel the loss so keenly as did Moses. The death of Aaron forcibly reminded Moses that his own end was near. And this is what happens at funerals. We think about our own end, that is near or far. But short as the time of his stay on earth must be, he deeply felt the loss of his constant companion, the one who had shared his joys and sorrows, his hopes and fears for so many years. Have you lost a loved one? The mourning period was hardly over when something shocking happened. The king of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel was coming on the road of Atarim. Then he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. From weeping to fear. Has this city been excavated? Your Bible names places, and then I delight to go and search for them. This is Arad, ruins in the Negev. Here you can see the site. The Bible is true. It's about 30 km south of Hebron, and it's called Tel Arad today. Tel Arad. And then you walk through the ruins and you read the signs there, and you realize the Bible is a true book. In one of these halls, the king of Arad and his counselor decided to go and wipe out the Israelites. Human and animal sacrifices were made here at Arad. Would God allow the king of Arad and his army to destroy his rebellious people? Let's read again what Moses wrote. The king of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel was coming on the road to Atarim. Then he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. The king killed a few in the rear and on the border of the line of march, and then he took some of them captive. How humiliating was capturing in those days. Look at my series, Digging Up the Past. I handle this subject there. What vows did Israel make? What would happen to the wicked people in the cities which were placed under the ban by God? These are the wicked cities of the Canaanites, which includes Arad. It says, no person under the ban who may become doomed to destruction among men shall be redeemed, but all shall surely be put to death. God suffered long with them, but the time for punishment had come. So Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy, dedicate, ban their cities. Ban meant death. How does it work in practice? Let's see what happened at Jericho. Now the city shall be doomed, banned, devoted by the Lord to destruction. It and all who are in it. Only Rahab, the harlot, shall live. And I like the way God saves sinners. She and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that were sent. Loretta, is there more information concerning the ban of Jericho? And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, ox and sheep, and donkey, with the edge of the sword. When something was dedicated to God, it could not be used for secular use. Would the Lord answer their prayer concerning the king of Arad who made war with them? What did Achan do? He stole some of the stuff and he was killed. The Bible said there's a ban, you cannot take the stuff, it belongs to God. And the Lord listened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their wicked cities. So the name of that place was called Hormah. How long did God wait before he punished them for sacrificing their children. He waited 400 years. But if God does not punish, the chaos would be unimaginable. Horma, the word means destruction in the sense of devoted to God and therefore not redeemable for man's use. The verb of the same word is given in verse 2 as utterly destroy. That is, offered to God as a sacrifice. The name Horma was applied to the city and its environs. We read in Joshua 12:14 how the cities of the king of Arad were eventually destroyed. Do not fight God's people. You can be destroyed. What happened after 30 days of mourning over Aaron's death and the victory over the king of Arad? Then they journeyed from Mount Hor, where they cried for 30 days, by the way of the Red Sea, to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. They were prohibited to go through Edom. When God told them to cross through Edom, they tarried and they moaned. And now they pay a dear price for their unbelief. Why? What was the reason? Unbelief, murmuring. And when we passed beyond our brethren, the descendants of Esau who dwell in Seir, away from the road of the plain, away from Elat and Ezion-Geber, we turned and passed by way of the wilderness of Moab. They were on their way to Ezion-Geber with their backs to the promised land. Hey, this is very sad. And this is what it looks like. If you turn away from God, it's barren, it's ugly. The route they took was on the Arabah. Arabah means deserted and dry. It is a barren plain strewn with sand and stones. You're looking at it. I walked where they walked. And I thought of what happened here, and I asked God, please help me not to complain and murmur. Can you see their faces? They started complaining. Emotions were worked up. Have you ever had to turn back? Have you ever had to turn back in life? And only you were to blame for turning back. You know, when we drive and I lose my way, my wife says, turn back. I said, no. Maybe you men are the same. If we do not get rid of our rebellious emotions, they will get rid of us. The choice is ours. Rebellion is fatal. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water. Lying, of course. And our soul loathes this worthless bread. What? It's manna from heaven. Unbelievable. What should happen to these ungrateful rebels? If you were to punish them, what would you do? But what about you and I? When we become rebellious, how does God treat us? He's such a gracious God. I see the character, the profile of God's love and tenderness in the study of his actions with Israel. Two men behind the bars, one saw mud, the other stars. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Have you ever been bitten by a poisonous snake? Are you aware of some casualties that happened to some of your families? This is what's happening now. Unbelief is disastrous. Where did they come from? Where did they come from? They were there all the time, but God performed a miracle and held them at bay. Because of their rebellion, the Lord withdrew his protection. Just a little personal note. My best friend, Walter Veit, when he starts moaning, I tell him, listen, watch out for the snakes. And when I phone him and moan and become sad, he says to me, watch out for the snakes. So I want to tell you, watch out for the snakes who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and that he might test you, to do you good in the end. So if you've got trials and tribulations now, in the end it will be good. Hold out, my friend. A snake called bitterness bites the discontented, physically and spiritually. Have you been bitten? Hope for someone that harbors bitterness? Is there hope for someone that harbors bitterness? Can God make us contented people? He can. If you're a bitter person, he can change you. I searched this place of the snakes for a very long time and eventually found it in Jordan. You can only reach this place by a 4x4. These young people do not represent the bitter, complaining people who were here 3,500 years ago. Look at their smiles. You know, a smile is so much better than a frown. In the Bible, the place is called Puton. And let's see what it is called today. Now, this picture is not too good. I'll have to show you another one. It's called Feinan. Feinan. Here is the reception. Very simple. We are going to relive the events that transpired here at Puton, place where the sins bit the people. Young people who went through deep waters are still able to smile and carry on with their lives. They had reasons to become bitter, but they decided to become better. And I baptized them in the Jordan River. Oh, they are such lovely people. The world needs lovely people, kind people. In our next presentation, we're going to discover more of God's marvelous antidote for bitterness. A heart in every thought renewed and filled with love divine, perfect and right and pure and good, a copy, Lord, of thine. Father, I'm sorry for being bitter at times, complaining of discontentment. I need a new heart. I need new victories to carry on to the end, because the end will be glorious. Help us in Jesus' name. Amen.